Between the cold lights of the supermarket, the millionaire saw the unthinkable, his ex-wife returning a box of milk because she didn't have enough money, and in that instant, the weight of the past pressed on his heart like never before. If you enjoy emotional dramas, subscribe to the channel and comment now from where you are listening. Continuing. Raphael had always had everything money could buy. At 42, he owned the largest luxury hotel chain in New York City, a man whose name opened doors and whose events filled the society pages of the city's main newspapers. He had apartments in Tribeca, a penthouse in Aspen, Colorado, and a beach house in the Hamptons that graced magazine covers. But there was one thing all his wealth couldn't bring back, and that absence had consumed him for 3 long years: Marina Smith. The name echoed in his mind like a sad song that refused to stop playing. She had been his wife, his best friend, his companion in dreams, until everything collapsed overnight on a September afternoon he would never forget. She found messages on his phone, messages that spoke of secret meetings, of mysterious plans. Her wounded pride didn't allow him to explain. His wounded pride didn't allow him to insist. And Marina Smith left, taking with her not only her clothes and her cookbooks, but also the peace Raphael never managed to recover. During those 3 years, he plunged into work like a drowning man clutching a plank. He inaugurated 2 new hotels, expanded his businesses into the interior, and won industry awards. But the nights were too long, and the silence of his apartment was deafening. Sometimes, he found himself preparing coffee for 2 or buying those French biscuits she adored. Loneliness had become his most constant companion. It was on a Thursday afternoon, one of those when New York City traffic seemed even more chaotic than usual, that fate decided to play with his life. Raphael was returning from a meeting in Queens when he realized he was out of coffee at home. On impulse, something he rarely did, he stopped at a popular supermarket in the area. It wasn't the kind of place where he usually shopped, accustomed as he was to the gourmet markets of Greenwich Village, but at that moment, it didn't matter. He entered the establishment with the ease of someone used to getting things done quickly. He grabbed the coffee, some fruit, and was heading to the checkout when he decided to walk through the baby products aisle. He wasn't sure why. Maybe it was just curiosity. Maybe it was an unconscious desire to imagine what his life would be like if things had been different. And that's when his world simultaneously collapsed and rebuilt itself. She was there, her back to him, thinner than he remembered, her brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore a faded blouse and sneakers that had seen better days. But Raphael would have recognized that silhouette anywhere in the world. Marina Smith. His heart pounded so hard he had to lean on the shopping cart to keep from swaying. She was holding 2 babies, one in each arm, while trying to balance some cans of baby formula. The little ones couldn't have been more than 6 months old. Twins, clearly, a boy and a girl. Raphael felt as if someone had sucked all the air from his lungs. The math was cruel and obvious. 3 years since the separation, 6-month-old babies, they were his children. Marina Smith seemed to be struggling with something, a difficult decision. Raphael watched her pick up 2 cans of milk and then return them to the shelf. Then she picked them up again, consulted her phone, perhaps a calculator, and returned the products once more. The scene cut through him like a blade. She didn't have enough money. The woman who once shared dinners with him in Michelin-starred restaurants now had to choose between 1 can of milk or another. Raphael felt a physical pain in his chest. He wanted to run to her, hug her, ask about the babies, offer help, but something stopped him. Fear. The fear that she would run away again. The fear that she would reject him. The fear that it was too late to fix what was broken. Instead, he stood there, hidden behind a pile of diapers, watching the woman he loved struggle with a reality he could solve with a credit card. She finally decided to take only 1 can of milk, the cheapest, and headed to the checkout with the babies crying softly, as if they understood the situation. Raphael waited for her to leave before approaching the cashier. With some excuse, he discovered she was a registered customer. Marina Smith. The address was in a simple area of Queens, very different from the upscale neighborhood where they had lived together. He paid for his own purchases like an automaton and left the supermarket with a single objective in mind. In the following days, Raphael transformed into his own private detective. He discreetly hired an investigator to find out Marina Smith's situation. The report he received was like a punch to the gut. She had lost the small restaurant she had tried to open after the separation in a fire 6 months earlier. She was unemployed, living in a studio apartment with the babies, receiving a small amount of help from her mother who lived in Vermont. She was alone, completely alone. Raphael didn't sleep for 3 consecutive nights. Guilt consumed him like acid. While he accumulated awards and money, she was raising his children in hardship. The children he didn't even know existed. The irony was bitter. They separated because she thought he was planning an affair. In truth, he was organizing a surprise, a renewal of vows, with the help of his sister. The messages she saw were about the surprise party, about new wedding bands, about how much he loved her. But she left before he could explain, and his pride didn't allow him to chase after her. Now, 3 years later, he discovered she was raising his children alone, in hardship, while he lived in a bubble of luxury. The guilt was unbearable. But Raphael knew he couldn't just appear in her life. Marina Smith had always been a proud, independent woman. If she knew he was behind any help, she would likely reject everything. That's when he had an idea. If he couldn't help as Raphael, he would help in another way. Within 2 weeks, Marina Smith began receiving discount coupons from a supposed community program from the City Hall for vulnerable mothers. The coupons covered exactly the products she needed most: diapers, milk, food. Raphael had created a phantom NGO with legal documentation and everything, just so he could help her without her knowing. But that was just the beginning. The building where Marina Smith's old restaurant had been, which had burned down, was mysteriously renovated by a construction company claiming to participate in an urban revitalization program. In a short time, the space was brand new, ready to host a new venture. That's when Marina Smith received a call that would change her life again. A chef position at a luxury resort that had just opened in the Aspen, Colorado area. The salary was excellent. There was accommodation for her and the babies, and a full health plan. It seemed too good to be true, but Marina Smith was in a situation where she couldn't pass up opportunities. What she didn't know was that the resort had a single owner, and that owner had bought the property, renovated everything, hired the best professionals, just to create a dignified job for her. Raphael monitored everything from afar, like an invisible guardian angel. He watched Marina Smith flourish in the resort kitchen, creating dishes that made guests return just to eat her creations. She had found her calling again, and that made him happy in a way he hadn't experienced in years. Months passed and Marina Smith became the resort's main attraction. Her regional cuisine, which blended Vermont tradition with refined techniques, began to attract the attention of the gastronomic press. That's when she received an invitation to participate in the country's largest food festival in New York City. Raphael was present at the event, of course, disguised among the entrepreneurs and investors. He saw Marina Smith present her dishes with a passion that made him fall in love with her again. She was radiant, talking about the flavors of Vermont, about the importance of valuing regional cuisine. The babies, now older and more alert, played in a corner of the stand, cared for by a nanny Raphael himself had discreetly provided. It was at this festival that a television producer noticed Marina Smith's talent. In 2 weeks, she had signed a contract to host a program about regional cuisine on the country's most famous food channel. The program was called Roots of Flavor, and Marina Smith would travel across the country discovering and valuing traditional dishes. Raphael watched every episode, proud and melancholic at the same time. Marina Smith was shining, realizing dreams she didn't even know she had, but he remained just a spectator of the life of the woman he loved and the children he didn't know. During this period, Raphael was also changing. He attended therapy twice a week, something he had never imagined doing before. He was learning about himself, about his fears, about how pride had destroyed what he loved most in life. He was becoming a different man, more humble, more human. It was during a live broadcast of Marina Smith's show, directly from the food festival, that everything changed. A reporter was asking questions about her success when a resort employee, unaware he was being filmed, commented to another that it was incredible how the owner of the place had been right to hire Marina Smith, that Rafael Mendoza had a keen eye for talent. The name echoed through the improvised studio. Rafael Mendoza. The host, curious, asked if Marina Smith knew the owner of the resort where she worked. The cameras captured the exact moment her face lost all color. She knew exactly who Rafael Mendoza was, and in that instant, she understood that nothing, absolutely nothing of those last few months had been a coincidence. The broadcast continued, but Marina Smith was clearly shaken. She finished the program on autopilot, answering questions without really listening. When the cameras turned off, she was furious. She felt manipulated, used, like a doll in the hands of someone playing with her life. That same night, Marina Smith confronted Rafael. She had discovered his address and appeared at his apartment with the babies in her arms and eyes full of angry tears. It was the first time they had spoken in 3 years, and her words cut deeper than any blade. Rafael was preparing dinner when the doorbell rang. It was almost 9 at night. He wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened the door, his heart almost stopped. Marina Smith was there, with Sophia and Michael in her arms, her eyes red from crying and anger. She walked in without asking permission, like a hurricane laden with 3 years of resentment. "You manipulated me, Rafael. You played with my life as if I were a doll. You made a fool of me," she said, her voice trembling between tears and indignation. "All this time, I thought I was starting over, that I was succeeding on my own, but it was you pulling the strings, controlling everything. How could you?" Rafael stood there still, looking at her and at the babies who were clearly his children. Michael had his dark eyes. Sophia had the shape of her face, but her smile was just like his. It was the first time he had seen them up close, and the emotion almost overwhelmed him. "Marina, I can explain," he began, but she interrupted him. "Explain what?" "That you created a fake NGO, that you bought an entire resort just to give me a job, that you manipulated my television career. What do you think I am, Rafael? A beggar who needs your charity? It's not charity, Marina. They are my children too." The words left his mouth before he could think. The silence that followed was deafening. Marina Smith stared at him with a mixture of surprise and confirmation. She always knew he would know the moment he saw them. "They are your children." "Yes," she admitted, her voice softer now, "but they don't need you, they never did. I managed to take care of them alone until now." "Managed?" Rafael looked around the luxurious apartment he was in, then looked at her simple clothes, at the dark circles under her eyes that betrayed sleepless nights, at the babies who clearly needed more care than a single mother could offer. "Marina, you didn't even have money for their milk. I saw you at the supermarket, returning the cans because you couldn't pay." Marina Smith closed her eyes, as if the memory was an open wound. It was at that moment that Rafael made the most important decision of his life. Instead of defending himself, instead of justifying his actions, he went to the table, picked up a folder that was there and handed it to her. "What is this?" Marina Smith asked, suspicious. "These are documents. I'm waiving all custody rights. I won't go to court. I won't claim anything. All I want, Marina, is to be able to see my children once a week, in the park with you present, not as a right, but as a request from someone who spent 3 years regretting his own pride." Marina Smith looked at the papers, incredulous. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I love you, because I always have, and because I realize that loving someone isn't about controlling. It's not about solving all their problems. It's about respecting, about being present when they allow it, about being worthy of their trust." That night, Marina Smith left without giving an answer. But 3 days later, she called. She said he could see the children on Saturday at Prospect Park, Brooklyn, from 2 to 4 in the afternoon. Rafael arrived 20 minutes early and waited on a bench, nervous as a teenager on a first date. When Marina Smith appeared with the double stroller, Rafael felt he was going to cry. Sophia and Michael were awake, curious, looking at everything around them. He didn't know how to approach them, what to say. Marina Smith noticed his nervousness and, for a few seconds, her gaze softened. "They're called Sophia and Michael," she said, taking Sophia out of the stroller. "She's quieter, he's more energetic. They like music and hate loud noise." Rafael hesitantly held out his arms, and Marina Smith placed Sophia there. The girl looked at him with curiosity, then stretched out her little hand and touched his face. It was the most emotional moment of Raphael's life. He was holding his daughter for the first time. The meetings at the park became sacred rituals. Every Saturday, from 2 to 4, Raphael was there. At first, Marina Smith was tense, observing his every move. But little by little, she relaxed. Raphael was careful, gentle, patient. He learned to change diapers right there, on the park benches. He learned to prepare bottles at the right temperature. He discovered that Sophia liked to be swung gently and that Michael preferred more active games. Marina Smith watched everything from afar, sitting at another table, pretending to read a book. But Raphael noticed when she smiled discreetly, seeing him try to build a sandcastle with children who could barely sit up straight. He was learning to be a father, and it was beautiful to watch. It was during the 3rd month of visits that everything changed. Sophia began to have a high fever that wouldn't go down with any medicine. Marina Smith was desperate. She had taken the girl to 3 different doctors, and no one could diagnose the problem. That's when Raphael, discreetly, managed to schedule an appointment with the country's best pediatric infectious disease specialist, a doctor who usually had a 6-month waiting list. He didn't tell Marina Smith that he had interfered. He simply called her and said that a doctor friend had managed to fit Sophia into an urgent appointment. Marina Smith didn't question it. Her concern for her daughter was greater than any pride. The diagnosis was a rare but treatable infection. Sophia was hospitalized for a week, and Raphael spent every night at the hospital, sleeping in an uncomfortable armchair beside her crib. Marina Smith was exhausted, and for the first time in months, she accepted his help without questioning. It was during those long nights at the hospital that they truly talked again. Raphael spoke about therapy, about how he had understood that his pride had destroyed everything between them. Marina Smith spoke about her fears of raising 2 children alone, about the nights when she felt completely lost. "Do you know why I left that afternoon?" Marina Smith asked one early morning, while Sophia finally slept without a fever. "Because of the messages on my phone. Not just because of that. I left because I thought you didn't love me anymore. I thought you were tired of me, that you wanted a younger, more interesting woman. The messages were just confirmation of what I already felt." Raphael remained silent for a long time. Then he took her hand, delicately. "Marina, I have never loved anyone like I love you. I never even considered loving anyone else. Those messages were about a surprise party I was organizing to renew our vows. I wanted to ask you to marry me again, in front of all our friends, because I wanted the whole world to know how much I love you." Marina Smith began to cry softly. 3 years of resentment mixed with relief and sadness for the lost time. When Sophia was discharged, something had changed between them. It wasn't that they were a couple again, but there was a new friendship, mutual respect, a partnership in raising their children. It was around this time that Marina Smith received an incredible offer, a national tour to record special episodes of her show in different regions of the country. It was the chance of a lifetime, but it meant traveling for 2 months. How could she leave Sophia and Michael? Raphael offered to take care of the children during her trip. Marina Smith hesitated, but he had proven to be a present and caring father. She accepted, but with one condition: he would have to temporarily move into her apartment so the children could stay in a familiar environment. They were 2 strange and wonderful months. Raphael discovered the real routine of being a father: sleepless nights, constant worries, but also senseless laughter. Michael's first wobbly steps, Sophia's first words. He sent videos to Marina Smith every day, and she saw that the children were happy and well cared for. When Marina Smith returned from the tour, she found a scene that deeply moved her. Raphael was on the living room floor, assembling a huge puzzle with Sophia on his lap, while Michael tried to help by scattering the pieces. The house was organized, the children were clean and happy, and a delicious smell came from the kitchen. "You cooked?" Marina Smith asked, surprised. "I learned a few things. I discovered that homemade baby food is tastier than store-bought, and that Sophia loves sweet potato puree." It was at that moment that Marina Smith realized something that both frightened and delighted her. She was no longer angry with him. In fact, she was enjoying having him around. But life had other surprises in store for Raphael. During Marina Smith's absence, He had practically abandoned his businesses, delegating everything to his partners. It was during this period that they orchestrated a kind of corporate coup, alleging that Raphael had lost focus and was harming the company with his troubled personal life, especially after the television exposure. The shareholders voted for his removal from the presidency. In a 6-hour meeting, Raphael lost control of the company he had built over 20 years. He lost the hotels, he lost most of his assets, he lost the life he knew. But when he arrived home that night and found Marina Smith bathing the babies, when Sophia reached out her little arms to him and Michael shouted, "Daddy!" For the first time, Raphael realized he felt neither anger nor sadness. Marina Smith was shocked when he told her what had happened. "You lost everything?" she asked, concerned. "I lost the businesses. I lost a lot of money. But I didn't lose what really matters. And what will you do now?" Raphael had an answer ready. He had thought about it a lot during the 2 months he spent taking care of the children. He was going to use the money he still had to create a real foundation, not like the phantom NGO he had invented to help Marina Smith, a foundation to support single mothers and entrepreneurs. He wanted to give back to society what society had taught him. Marina Smith looked at him with an admiration he hadn't seen in her eyes for a long time. The man in front of her was no longer the arrogant businessman she had known. He was someone who had been shaped by pain, by humility, by fatherhood. The foundation started small. In a simple commercial office in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, Raphael worked alone at first, assisting mothers who needed support to open small businesses. Marina Smith helped him on weekends, teaching cooking to women who wanted to work with food. It was gratifying in a way neither of them had experienced before. It was during one of these cooking classes that news arrived that would change everything again. The resort where Marina Smith had worked, where everything had begun, was hit by a severe storm followed by a landslide. The damage was enormous, and many families in the region lost their homes. Raphael and Marina Smith, without even discussing it, got in the car and went to Aspen, Colorado to help in any way necessary. They spent a week there, coordinating food distribution, organizing temporary shelters, cooking for hundreds of people. Raphael was unrecognizable, with his hands in the mud, carrying furniture, serving food. Marina Smith watched him work and realized she was seeing the man who had always existed beneath the corporate facade. It was on one of those nights, after an exhausting day helping the affected families, that Marina Smith hugged him, a sincere, affectionate hug of recognition. It wasn't planned, it wasn't calculated, it was spontaneous. And Raphael felt that he had finally come home. They didn't announce that they were back together. There were no formal conversations about their relationship. They simply began to build a life together naturally. Raphael permanently moved into her apartment, helping with the children and the organization of the house. Marina Smith continued with her television program, but now with the tranquility of having a present partner. Together, they decided to found a community culinary center in Queens, where Marina Smith had been found in that supermarket 3 years earlier. It was a space where women could learn to cook, teach their recipes, sell their products, and gain financial independence. The center was inaugurated with a simple party, where Marina Smith cooked for the entire community, and Raphael played with the children running around the backyard. On Sophia and Michael's first birthday, they organized a party in the backyard of the culinary center. Homemade chocolate cake, chocolate truffles made by Marina Smith herself, dear friends, neighbors who became family. Raphael looked at that scene, his daughter trying to blow out the candle, his son smeared with chocolate truffles up to his ears, Marina Smith laughing at something a friend had told her, and he realized that he had found his true wealth. There was no formal marriage proposal. There were no dramatic declarations. But one ordinary morning, Marina Smith woke up and found 2 simple wedding bands on the kitchen table next to the breakfast Raphael had prepared. She put hers on her finger without saying anything. He did the same with his, and just like that, simply, they got married again. The neighbors knew they were back together. The children grew up happy, naturally calling Raphael Daddy. The culinary center became a reference in the region, helping dozens of women rebuild their lives. And Raphael, finally, understood that his greatest achievement was not an empire of hotels or a fortune in the bank. It was breakfast shared with Marina Smith on a Saturday morning, while Sophia and Michael played in the backyard. It was her laughter when he unsuccessfully tried to comb their daughter's rebellious hair. It was coming home after a day of work at the foundation and finding his family waiting for him. It was having learned that loving is not possessing, not controlling, not solving all of someone's problems. Loving is being present. It is being worthy of trust. It is building together, day after day, a life worth living. And looking out the kitchen window, seeing Marina Smith teach Michael to plant basil seedlings while Sophia tried to eat dirt, Raphael smiled. He had lost an empire, but he had gained a home, and there was no fairer trade in the world. End of story. Dear listeners, Raphael and Marina Smith's story shows us that sometimes you have to lose everything to find what truly matters. If you were moved by this journey of redemption and true love, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what moment touched your heart the most. Because just as Raphael discovered, the most valuable treasures in life don't fit in a safe, they fit in the heart. And that's what we bring to you every day here. Stories that speak of the human soul, our fears, our dreams, our infinite capacity to start anew. Until the next episode, and remember, it's never too late to fix what pride broke.